Welcome to Close the Door and Come Here, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast with heavy leadings towards our two favorite characters, Jaime and Brienne. Hey everyone, I'm Guile. You can find me at Guile and Subterfuge on Blue Sky, and today I'm joined by Kama.
Hi, this is Kama, and you can find me at Kama's Place on Blue Sky.
And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing Tyrion's 8th chapter in A Dance with Dragons. Standard trigger warnings and spoiler warnings for, pretty much everything that you can imagine in a Tyrion chapter. Although, for a Tyrion chapter, not as terrible as we would think. So, on that note, we join Tyrion when he's aboard a ship who I'm not even going to try to attempt to pronounce. And they're on their way to Karth, but not really. They're actually on their way to Marine. And there's a red priest aboard, Makoro, I don't know if we want to decide how we want to pronounce it, who's giving kind of the standard, the standard Lord of Light prayers. And, it's so funny because, Tyrion, I don't know if you felt this way, Kama, but, Tyrion was sort of back to being Tyrion in this chapter.
He wasn't as bad as he normally is, although he has his moments. But I don't know if that's because he's dealing with Penny, who's clearly he's not interested in sexually, thank God, and who seems like she's young, right? And she's very upset, and he seems like comparatively decent and less bitter.
He starts out kind of bitching about, all the sailors are ugly and they're all bad at, the Savas. And, he's just kind of cranky. But, obviously he sort of developed a bit of a rapport with Makoro even, because he's talking to him and he's not talking to Jorah, who it sounds like he's just, in pretty miserable. But, he does spend some time, he obviously has talked to Makoro a bit, and he, Penny Penny won't come out of her quarters. When she does, she runs away as soon as she sees Tyrion. She's pretty, and, she's obviously been sobbing the whole time. She's in a bad way. And, Tyrion is definitely, against, I think his wishes, basically. He is pretty upset about that. And, Jorah's just like, oh, maybe you should marry her. I don't care. And I mean, that was sort of the funny passage where Tyrion's like, because we're both dwarves, is that why? And I mean, obviously Jorah's like, yes, that literally is exactly why I'm saying that. It's duh. Because, Jorah is a man that would lack all imagination, clearly. No big surprise. And before he spends some more time with Penny, we do get this pretty cool moment where he's talking to Makaro, and he wants to know what he sees in the flames, and he says, dragons old and young, true and false, bright and dark, and you, a small man with a big shadow, snarling in the midst of it all. But just the word snarling in that phrase is so yes, that is exactly who. I mean, it's not who the Tyrion we first met is, but it's this Tyrion. That's exactly what he'd be doing,
Yeah.
And it's just such a great phrase. And it's just at one point, it's just little simple things. Cause Tyrion says something to Makaro. Makaro replies, no, my friend. And Tyrion thinks, my friend? When did that happen, I wonder? And it's so weird because I do think it's Tyrion coming back to life a little bit in this chapter for a little bit, because he kind of is Makaro's friend. They are sort of friends, and it's just him not quite getting that, I think from an emotional perspective, Tyrion's coming up from bottom. Obviously there's still more in the story to go, but I felt through some of these conversations, he has a purpose again a little bit. And there's like a confidence to him that is kind of nice. Having slogged through a lot of these Tyrion chapters, it's sort of nice to see this guy again.
Well, he's been in this funk, right? Like he's been in this morass for God knows how long. And I think he's finally coming out of it.
And a lot of it is Penny, because I mean, he does realize that Penny, Penny she needs someone. And he's so afraid that Penny's gonna like want him, like want him to be in her show, want him as a love interest or, or whatever. Like he does totally, he 100% thinks he's better than her. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yes, yes,
But
he does.
it is what, eventually they do get to, they talk and, at first Penny's basically super angry with Tyrion and blames him for her brother dying and and for this other person, that this other dwarf that they know who was killed. And she's like, why didn't you just join us in the joust? Like if you would have just done that, none of this would have happened. Which is true, but I mean, like, there's no force on earth that would have allowed Tyrion to do that. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
would never have done
he
that.
would never have done it. And honestly, I think Tywin would have put a stop to it or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
it wasn't going to happen. But she's a, I mean, she's a teenager and she's hurting, and all of this stuff makes sense, right? That she's sort of what ifing it all.
yeah. And he's for a while Tyrion was kind of worried she was going to kill herself. And I think that's him projecting because, he also thinks, like, I think more towards the start of the journey, he thinks at night, like, he could just kill himself. And, he's thinking about a lot here. Like, he kind of sees Jorah, like, staring off and his impatience and everything. And he thinks, like, he just wants to get back to Daenerys. And he thinks, like, if Tysha was waiting for me, I'd feel the same way. Um, so all of this loss and all of these feelings that he wasn't really willing to express, he's actually empathizing with other people a little bit as well. Like he's in a better place. It's he's going the long way. He's kind of going the long way to get there at sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And he does learn a little bit of Penny's backstory and how. And it seems like, they kind of had sort of a fun life with her, her dad and her brother. Like I think her dad was a dwarf and her mom was
Yes.
a full size woman. And I don't know the right phrase. I don't want to say regular, so I feel like full size. Um,
Not a little person.
Not a little person, yeah. And they would, they kind of talk. Penny even talks about like, well, they couldn't stay somewhere too long because kind of their show is a bit repetitive. And but yeah, it's just like they sort of had this fun, happy life, I think, until her parents died, and now her brother was murdered and stuff, and she's she doesn't know what she's gonna do. Like she like what am I gonna do? Like what am I supposed to do? And Tyrion reassures her that Danny will, she'll find the Silver Queen or whatever, will find a place for you. And it's just funny that he is you know he he's kind of fallen a bit for Danny's press here, that I think he's genuine about that. Like he's not just saying that to her to be nice. I think he actually thinks like, oh yeah, for everything we've heard of Daenerys Targaryen, like of course she's gonna like be kind to this poor girl.
Yeah, I think he also wants to believe that, but yeah.
Um, and it is like the other thing is like I don't think Tyrion, he talks about how like Tywin obviously wasn't going to have any dwarves around Casterly Rock, so he's never been around. He's never been around other dwarves. I mean, I know he desperately doesn't want to identify with her either, but he kind of can't help it. Um, he's he's kind of a better a better person through, and I, again, like I hate that whole idea of like, oh, he becomes a better person through knowing her, but like he does. Like,
He's been liquored up, stuck in his very, very dark thoughts for quite a while. And now he's with someone who is not afraid to speak truth to power or to at least, and I think her grief is such that it is very hard. And also because he has not sexualized her,
yeah.
he's more listening to her as if she was real, as opposed to he usually objectifies women. So I think all of that. I mean, it doesn't make me like him more, but it does, I think, explain why he is not quite as loathsome as he has been.
Yeah, and I think they go through this big storm, and yes, it's a storm, but it's also quite it's also a bit metaphorical too. Like that feeling. We like where I live this afternoon. We had a thunderstorm go through and stuff, and it's that that fresh feeling after a storm is a little bit of where he is at the moment. Like
Yeah.
it is, again, like I know that there's more that's going to happen to Tyrion, but at this moment, like there definitely is like a bit of a new, he's, I mean, he's not thinking about killing himself. He's kind of like thinking about his next steps in a not just I want to rape and kill my sister kind of way. Like he's a little bit back to, getting back to who he was.
Yeah.
Um, he definitely has his negative thoughts of Cersei, but as always, often has those like, there's a point where Penny talks, it's like I miss him so much, my brother, and Tyrion says I understand, and he thinks about Jaime, but he thinks,
Mhm.
count yourself lucky that your brother died before he could betray you. But I also feel like he doesn't mean it, and I know that that's like the Jaime fan in me talking, but as much as Tyrion wants to like hate Jaime forever, like he's obviously, at least to me, he's obviously not going to.
He's been so wrapped up in holding on to his anger and holding on to this worldview about how everything has been against him and blaming people for all of these things. And it's understandable, some of this, right? But like I think he's finally beginning to let go a little bit of that, which is good because you know, this is what we've been in his head for a while now, and it's not
Yeah,
a pleasant place to be.
right. And I mean, it's like the life that he thought he was going to, the life that he thought he was going to have, or like the path he thought he was going to go down, which I don't even know what that path necessarily was because of the weirdness around him, him inheriting and stuff. But it's like he's maybe finally like embracing that his life isn't over because of what he his life isn't over because of what happened in King's Landing, and like it doesn't
Yeah.
need to be. um so yeah, the Tyrion coming out of this chapter is kind of he's an interesting guy. And then the chapter takes like this weird kind of right near the end, like they're going by Valeria, and it takes like this sort of a little magical segue, and basically it almost looks like the sunrise. There's these 14 flames that are still in Valeria, and it's like looks like on fire and stuff. And Tyrion recalls his uncle Jerion, who left from Lannisport to go to Valeria and find a Valerian sword and never returned. And we find out like Tywin's men tracked him to Volantis, and at Volantis, like his crew rebelled, and he brought all slaves to replace them, and he's never been seen since. And we find, basically it sounds like basically Valeria is like a super volcano where, lakes turn to acid and they're, spewing molten rock, but like it's still happening. But like every volcano or hill for 500 miles, they say. So like, pretty bad.
Yeah.
like 500, 1,000 Mount St. Helens, like all at once. Also, this is my opportunity on the podcast to say my two favorite words, pyroclastic flow. It doesn't come up very often, but so it's just, all of it. It's like, oh, Tyrion's coming back to himself, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like, volcanoes. Like, it's such like a jarring part of the journey. Um, and, the captain they don't even want to be, like, they want to be really far out, from, they want to be like away from Blair, like further out to sea to get away from it.
Yeah.
But they're saying, like, no, the captain, like Makar's like, no, I tell him I want to take the shortest course because others are coming, for Daenerys too. And, Tyrion's like, oh, have you seen he's wondering if it's Griff still, or, are they really sailing west or are they not? So he asks, like, have you seen these others in your fires? And it ends with only the shadows, Makaro said, one most of all, a tall and twisted thing with one black eye and 10 long arms sailing on a sea of blood.
Very
Which,
subtle.
yeah. And I mean, okay, so I get my Greyjoys mixed up. Like, obviously, like, but it's not Victorian, right? Like, Euron's the one with one eye, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But, like, Victorian's the one that's going to Marine. So this is
Unless,
where I get
yeah.
confused.
I assumed it was Euron, but,
Yeah.
you know.
And then obviously we have Marwyn on the Cinnamon Wind headed there too. And that's it, right? Like, I'm literally not forgetting an entire plot
I
line because that could,
don't think
I
so.
guess at this point is Quentin there? Like, he's also going there.
Yeah, he's on his way.
Okay, so there's like so there's like four different groups. See, this is why, like, again, lovely, beautifully written chapter, but really there's like four separate groups of people going there, and you didn't think this was a problem.
I Part of me is just like, why didn't you just have this happen and like they arrive? Forget this journey. We don't need to be on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess the counterpoint would be that, like, the Tyrion that we see at the end of A Storm of Swords, like, that guy can't just show up again. So, like, he's going to be someone else, but, like, how, like, and Tyrion's too important to just infer that, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm.
And, Penny's pretty delightful, honestly. Like, I think sometimes when we think about Penny and you haven't read her lately, you kind of just think like bland, sweet girl, oh, she's sweet. But like there's a lot more to, like, she's pretty sharp. She's kind of fierce. Like, she's great. Like, Penny's not a terrible, annoying character at all. She's just a girl, which is why a big portion of the readership hates her. But she's cool. I like Penny.
Yeah, no, she's, I have not, when we decided we were going to do these books, I somehow keep getting stuck with the Tyrion chapters, and they're unpleasant. They really are. So when we have something like this happen, it's like, oh, you know. So I like Penny. She seems
Yeah.
like a likable character. Yeah, I'm no complaints.
Anything else we want to talk about, or any questions for this chapter?
We did get two. Buck O'Hare from the Discord asks, Mokaro represents more involvement by the Red Priests. Do you care?
I do care. Like, I find the Relore group kind of interesting because, like, the way that they're tied into, like, the slave rebellion in Essos is kind of interesting to me. And also, like, Melisandre's interesting. And I think if there's the perspective of there is a supernatural threat, so like there does need to be a supernatural response. So I'm okay with the red priest in here.
I don't have any feelings either way. So,
Yeah.
and then Green Mountain Woman from Reddit asks, I know I'm entering tinfoil territory here, but I've always wondered if the widow of the waterfront could be the mistress of Tytos, who was forced by Tywin to walk naked through Lannisport. She knows who Tyrion is and calls him Lannister with special venom. Why does she care about the Lannisters? Also, love the podcast.
I mean, would she be pretty old though if she was Tydos's mistress?
Yeah, you know what? This is where the wiki is always
Because
very helpful.
like,
Well,
I
she could have
mean,
been, she'd be younger than Tytos, I have to
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
Um, because he would have been, old man, um, younger
But like
woman.
Tywin, you
Yeah,
know,
know anything about her. We don't know anything about her age.
yeah. So what we know, Jaime and Cersei are like 32, right? 32, 33. And we don't think that Tytos was alive then, because wasn't Tywin the Lord of Casterly Rock when they were born? So if she was like 17, I guess she'd be 50. So maybe, I
He,
guess she could be in her 50s or 60s.
he died at 46.
Okay.
He was born in 220 AC, died 267 AC. This is, okay, way younger than I thought.
Yeah. So I mean, she potentially, but I mean, what is it like? It's 300 or 301. So, I mean, she could be in her 50s or 60s. So, yeah, I mean, age wise, she could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
of all the theories out there, I don't think this is that out there. I think this is fine.
yeah, agreed. I mean, I also feel like, you know, I imagine that well, in Westeros, the Lannisters certainly have their enemies.
Yeah.
Anything else on this chapter?
I don't have anything.
All right. Well, if you want to send us a message or ask a question, you can reach us on the Jaime and Brienne subreddit. You can send us an email to closethedoorand@gmail.com. You can find us on Tumblr at Close the Door and Come Here. And you can also send an anonymous question on Tumblr if you're more comfortable with that. Like, subscribe, support us wherever you listen to podcasts, and support us on Patreon at Close the Door. And with that, I am closing the door. Get out.